right now, we'll do some announcements as people join. I just want to say welcome to the first ever Code Connect. We're kind of excited to be here today. This is, the first VMware Code Connect where we can all get together. I think we've had over 2,000 people sign up for the 2-day event, so we're really happy about that. And we have a great lineup of sessions that are going to be happening over the 2 days. I think there's over 50 different sessions. Later on today, after Kit opens us up, we have a couple coding experiences that are longer where they're going to be doing live coding. So make sure that you experience those. Some of our code coaches are going to be doing live coding. At the same time, later today, we have a scripting competition. So that should be fun. So you can compete and do some scripts. We have a hackathon going on over the couple days, so we'll showcase the hackathon winners tomorrow. So that's good. And then tomorrow we are going to have Pat Gelsinger here to open up day 2 for the keynote, just to come in and say hello and tell us why coders matter for VMware. So that should be exciting. And then we have 3 tracks going on all day tomorrow. One on Kubernetes, another on PowerShell and traditional automation, vRealize automation and scripting. And then a third is just a community track that have come in from various community members. So all in all, we're excited. A lot of the sessions have, 500, 600, 700 people signed up for them. So we're excited about that. I think Kit's is over 1,000 here that signed up. So we'll see how many come in, but we're excited about the whole 2-day event, and all of this is live. So these are all, none of these are pre-recorded. They're all live sessions. And so it should be an engaging place that you can ask the presenters questions, be respectful, and enjoy that. And with that, as we come up to the top of the hour, we'll introduce Kit, but we have, I think, another minute left. Other announcements, I would like to do a shout out to Kripa and Sophie, who organized with the code coaches this 2-day event. It's a lot of work on the website, a lot of work scheduling everybody. So thank you, Kripa and Sophie, for putting this all together and enabling us all to come together in a real-time environment. Put the code, a lot of the sessions are on GitHub. So note to self, you can go to Code Connect, the website. You can register for code at code.vmware.com. Go to the Code Connect website. It's on GitHub. So all the sessions and all the code examples are checked into the project. So you can go get all our materials by just dropping by GitHub and being on the project. And so with that, as we come up to the top of the hour, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Kit Colbert. Kit is VMware's VP and CTO of the Cloud Platform Business Unit. And his claim to fame is he's been here at the company as long as I have or longer. And I believe he interned on vMotion. So longtime guy. Kit, thanks for coming here and opening up this 2-day event.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I think it was my 17th anniversary what is it? I guess it's October now, so last month, September. And you're right, yeah, I did intern here in 2002. I worked on actually some of the core parts of the ESX kernel. And at the time, it was when vMotion was being written. So I got to see the first vMotion that was, the first internal demo that we did of it, which is pretty exciting. Obviously, we've come a long way since then. So what I wanted to do was, let me bring up my slides here. Go into full screen mode. Okay. Yes, they work. Okay, sweet. Well, again, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I think it's super cool that we have a whole conference now around automation, scripting, coding, and really talking about the importance of that to VMware, to all of our products and our services. So thanks so much for coming, and thanks so much for having me. So my focus for today was to really talk around automation. And I'm the CTO for vSphere, so clearly there's going to be a bit of a vSphere angle here. But I did want to start off a little bit with the vision, kind of where are we going, what's the bigger picture, and then start to talk about how we are really focused on automation across our stack, both with some existing areas and then some new areas as well. So let's dive right in. Okay. So you've probably seen this slide. Shouldn't be new to many folks who've been watching VMworld this year. Fundamentally, for VMware, our strategy is multi-cloud. And we want to be able to build, run, manage, connect, protect all the apps that are out there, any app on any cloud. And we've done a lot of work over the past few years to get our software-defined data center, or VMware Cloud Foundation, onto all these different clouds to really make it seamless. To be able to support actually not just VMware infrastructure running there, but also the native environments as well. And when we talk to customers, what we find is that they are going multi-cloud. And the reason they're going multi-cloud is not necessarily obvious from the beginning. What we found was that actually it was application modernization that frequently drove their multi-cloud decisions. Each app, they need to figure out how to take forward in its own unique way based on its own unique characteristics and requirements. And so as you can see here, there's a number of different paths that application can take. We can rehost it, we can refactor it, and as you start looking at that, each application team making those decisions, you can quickly see how all these apps are kind of going in all sorts of different directions. And that even if a company doesn't necessarily intend to, it can very quickly become a multi-cloud company. So with that in mind, pardon me, with that in mind, we really were looking at how can we best support this? And I think the unique thing about VMware is really our architectural approach. If you look at public clouds, you see that they're sort of vertically integrated. And they all, from the bottom up, right? They've got their own hardware and their own data center, fully optimized to their own sort of infrastructure software and management software, to various sorts of application services that they expose. And VMware's taken a very different approach. Our approach is fundamentally horizontal in nature rather than vertical. And what that means is that we produced this really powerful infrastructure and management layer, which can be deployed or installed on any sort of physical infrastructure at any location, whether that's on-prem, at the edge, at a colo site, in a public cloud, like the ones we just mentioned. We also have 4,300 some odd VMware Cloud Provider partners. And so it's just this really broad footprint that we can have because of the power of our partnerships. Moreover, we've really been focused on enabling as much diversity and heterogeneity above us as well. So you can see, we support all sorts of different apps, not just modern ones, but traditional ones. In fact, that's a huge part of our value prop, is being able to take forward a lot of these older workloads that still run on some crazy operating system from like 25 years ago, but they still drive a lot of business, maybe not surprisingly, right? At the same time, simultaneously in the same cluster even, we can support brand new modern application services really running side by side. So it really is the power of the horizontal that enables us to do this. And when you start looking at what we built out, and in fact, I just realized I forgot to update the slide because I think that this slide is about a year old, and now we've actually increased most of these numbers, so they're a little bit outdated. But the point is that there's a lot of things that we've done. If you look across the different sort of public clouds that we're running on here, and then you add in all of the VMware Cloud Provider partners, what you see is this massive distributed cloud, right? What we're doing here is a type of cloud, but it's not the same sort of vertically integrated public cloud. It's a more horizontally stretched distributed cloud running wherever our customers need it to run. And this is just, our cloud partnerships. If you put in all the different locations where people are running vSphere all over the world, well, there'd be kind of dots everywhere. And yes, I did notice that this slide is something happened to it because there's dots in the middle of the ocean. I'm not sure what that means. Like maybe they're on an oil tanker or something. I don't know. But it's the gist of it that I think is the point here. And so when you start looking at this and start looking at where we're going, is that we really want to enable customers to have that freedom of choice, to have that proliferation of distribution. You get problems of scale there, right? I mean, just think about it. And this notion of having to get in and kind of manually manage each individual ESX cluster or even each individual vCenter deployment starts to seem crazy because you're just like, you can't manage that level of scale. And so this is where automation becomes so important, right? And so when we think about where customers are going and the types of applications they're deploying, how distributed these things are, we really need to up-level the sorts of abstractions that we expose to our customers and to give them greater capabilities around automation. And that really means, in the end, exposing more and more powerful APIs. And so if we go back to that diagram I showed, again, this is kind of a CTO level diagram, right? Just a few boxes. But you can sort of see how we need to automate at all these different levels. And so in the middle box, the blue box there, this is a mind-bogglingly dramatic simplification of our overall software stack. And I'm only going to focus on a couple of parts of it, right? But there's many, many others. There's all the stuff we're doing with Tanzu and everything we're doing with like our security initiative around Carbon Black and so on and so forth. Lots of activity happening there. I won't be able to touch it all, but I do want to cover some of the core stuff that's near and dear to my heart, and I think is near and dear to many of yours on the call here as well. So let's start off with the middle and kind of review what we're doing there, and then we'll get to the other two sections. Okay, so we've been on a long road around automation with vSphere. So as you know, we have a whole API and automation layer, whole focus there. We have our traditional SDK, our management SDK, which is our SOAP-based APIs. We now have an automation SDK, which focuses on our REST-like APIs. And also, we have this new Kubernetes thing that's now an API into our system as well that I'll be talking about. But in general, we've been adding a lot of functionality on top of that to try and make it as easy to use as possible, to get that information at your fingertips, as well as providing the right tools and technologies to further simplify leveraging our APIs automation. So the developer experience, again, there's a lot of work that we're doing there that we're going to talk through. A lot of infrastructure as code, and obviously a very exciting announcement a couple of days ago around our Salt Stack intent to acquire there. Talk a little bit about that. And then, everything we're doing around PowerShell, PowerCLI, huge usage out there, and our SDKs. So let's dive in. First things first, vSphere 7. Continuing to move the ball forward here. A lot of work that we're doing every release. vSphere 7 was a really big release for us. As you probably know, or hopefully have heard by now, we're really focusing on our automation SDK, on our REST-like APIs as our go-forward strategy. So that means all the new APIs that we get out there, like for instance, all the Kubernetes integration that we did, and the infusing Kubernetes knowledge and capabilities inside of the vSphere APIs, those are all going to be REST-based. And simultaneously, what we're doing is taking all the SOAP-based APIs and converting them over to REST. And so you can see here some of the work that we're doing there. As you know, it's a tremendous number of APIs there. There's a lot of work. We can only get so many done each release, but really what we're doing is just continuing to hammer away at it and making a lot of progress there. We're also doing a lot of investment into our SDKs, both our management and automation ones, as I said. But again, the go forward there is the automation. That's where the bulk of the effort is happening. PowerCLI is always a focus there. We're really looking at even how we do better automation internally so we can more easily generate the right SDK capabilities and PowerCLI as well. VRO, we know that's hugely used within our customer base. And so we want to make that even easier to access from within vSphere, the vSphere client. So we've gotten kind of a beta of that integration. Ansible, Terraform, really focused on the vSphere provider for those ones as well. On the roadmap side, as I said, looking forward, we've got to continue to push on moving everything over to our REST-like APIs, moving away from SOAP over time. And then what we also want to do is really look at how we can simplify your interactions with these APIs, especially when you have many vCenters. Can we create a single API endpoint, maybe an API gateway, that kind of can abstract a lot of that? And you can sort of talk to that single endpoint, and it kind of figures out where the request needs to go and does all that intelligently for you. And especially when you look at that picture from just a couple of slides back, this kind of massive, globally distributed environment, things like this can start to become pretty interesting and pretty beneficial. So let's talk about the Terraform provider. We do know this is very popular as well. We put a lot of work in on it. So this is a obviously open source. You can see the link here. Community supported. We work very closely with HashiCorp on this one. We've gotten a lot of features in there: VM provisioning, configuration, different deployment options, VM template and content library support. host and cluster configuration options, networking, DVS, DRS as well, tags, custom attributes. The list goes on and on. You can see them all here. But there's clearly a lot of work to do. So as I mentioned, when we added Kubernetes to vSphere, we did actually two things, really. We first have just a native Kubernetes API. You can use the Terraform provider for Kubernetes there, it works great. Or we've also infused our vSphere APIs with some of this Kubernetes knowledge. And so that's really what number one is talking to. How do we ensure that we can best support that inside of Terraform? Getting more advanced networking support. And then the full vSphere configuration is really talking about how do we ensure you can really deploy and stand up a full vSphere environment end to end using Terraform. So more work to do there, as we said. But we have made a lot of investments across the board on Terraform. And similarly speaking with Ansible, right? Again, another open source community supported model here. A lot of similar features, actually, so don't need to read through those. Similar roadmap as well. vSphere Lifecycle Manager, VLCM, is something that we do want to focus on here as well and really drive that integration there. So both for Terraform and for Ansible, a lot of work going in, and the benefits are pretty clear. Again, customers are saying, hey, this is awesome. A lot of people standardize on Terraform for all their environments, right? And they're like, hey, it's nice to be able to plug vSphere into this. Now I get this kind of consistent model. And you can see here, it's very seamless, right? Works well with Terraform. Similar with Ansible, just a quick example for this one. So a lot of cool things happening. As I said, made a lot of good progress, but clearly still a lot of work to do there. Okay, now let's talk about the developer center and really the developer experience on top of vSphere. This is, again, another huge area that we've tried to focus on the last few years. So when we look at the developer center, we really want to put it in the product at your fingertips, make it really easy to consume, really easy to get the information that you need. So there's a few different areas that I want to talk through here. API Explorer, code capture, and then a Fling that we have called Power Actions, which is really cool. Okay, so the API Explorer, it's in there. It's for our REST APIs. It's very easy, very intuitive to walk through this, find what you need. You can go to the API that you want to get into and look at all the different actions you can do on it, what you need to pass in, what the output looks like. You can even get code that you can copy and paste into the shell if you'd like. So really, really easy to use. You can test out things on here, see how they work. Really easy just to try stuff out. And that's really the point, right? We don't want to make it a big endeavor. We want to make it easy for you to quickly get up to speed on this and start using it. Similarly speaking, with code capture, this is really, really cool because, again, a lot of, I think, the VI admins out there have a history perhaps with Windows administration. A lot of that was traditionally point and click, although now a lot of it is PowerShell. But for those folks who are kind of transitioning maybe from more of a UI-centric approach to a code and automation-centric approach, code capture is really, really useful for that. Because what you can do is start a recording. You can go into the vSphere client, do what you need to do, click around the UI, execute some actions, create some tasks, whatever it is, and come back, and this thing will capture all the different actions that you did and translate it into code. In fact, you can choose the language that you want, as you can see over here on the right-hand side, which is really, really cool. And then you can save it and put it in your scripts or do whatever you need to. Now, one thing you will notice is that right now this is based on our management SDK, so our old SOAP-based APIs. So the real focus here, as we've talked about before, is switching over to our automation SDKs and to our REST-like APIs. And that is, again, our go-forward strategy here. This Fling is super cool as well. We can basically take all the scripts that you built, and now you can execute them from within the vSphere client. So you don't need to pop out to a shell. You can do it right there in context. It's really, really nice. It is a Fling, though, so you have to download it from the Fling site. We are looking to get that into the product, but we'd love your feedback on it. To help us improve it and figure out the right way to go about that. Okay, finally, the documentation, API documentation, developer.vmware.com. This is a whole new experience that we built pretty much from the ground up to fix a lot of the problems with the old one. SEO didn't work very well. It's hard to find stuff in there. It was an intuitive interface. Bookmarking didn't work well. So we've kind of fixed all those issues, right? And really built it from the ground up to be a really great experience. So you can dive in and get the information you need, and again, get back to coding. Okay, quickly touch on VRA and VRO. So VRA 8, a huge step forward in terms of automation, right? You know, this whole blueprint model that VRA has, they've really taken it to the next level. The YAML editor built in there side by side with the visual designer, allowing you to maybe design stuff visually, see what the code looks like, change the code, the visuals update. It's really nice. Workflows as well have that nice visual designer aspect. And we've also added serverless actions in here, which is really cool, these ABX type functionalities. And so this allows you to insert functionality based on when various events occur or other sorts of things, and you know, really simplifies that automation, kind of the Lambda-like functionality here. So if you haven't checked out VRA 8, highly recommend that you should. And we've also, you know, again, we've talked to customers who say, hey, I'm all in on Ansible or Terraform. That's great. We can integrate those really well with VRA and execute out to those scripts. And so these blueprints can include these things. And so again, regardless of what you're using, VRA can really be that overall orchestrator and that governance layer, enabling self-service and other things that connect back to the automation that you built. So really powerful, really seamless. And you know, there is a renewed effort there around Terraform as well, just like we saw with vSphere. And so you can see kind of we've integrated Terraform throughout. And the designer, the self-service catalog, deployment and policies, all these things kind of end-to-end, really embracing Terraform, because again, we see that usage growing amongst our customer base. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about VRO, because again, VRO, huge use amongst our customer base. Continue to invest there, really supporting all sorts of different components within the vSphere ecosystem, and really helping to automate that. Again, you know, exposing those REST APIs, PowerShell, PowerCLI integrations, SSH if you want, and then on the right, a whole host of third-party integrations, and really continuing to drive that with great integration into both vSphere and VRA, of course. Now, quickly, let me touch upon our announcement of SaltStack. So this is really exciting. We just announced this 2 days ago. I think it's 2 days ago. It feels like a year, but you know, the strategy here is to say, look, absolutely, we are an open platform. We want to support whatever type of configuration management tool, automation tool that you want to use. At the same time, we also want to offer the best out-of-the-box experience that we can. And so we really felt that we wanted to complement what we're doing with VRA with a powerful configuration management tool, and you know, SaltStack was a great fit there. So obviously this is an intent to acquire, that the deal you know, hasn't closed yet, but something that we're very excited about. And you know, I think you look at what SaltStack's been doing and the Salt open source project, you can just see there's, you know, tremendous community engagement around it. We're going to keep that open community engagement there, but also, as I said, you know, really drive deep integration and out-of-the-box functionality with VRA. So really, really exciting thing. I can't spend too much time on it because I think I'm already a bit behind my schedule here. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the newer areas, right? And you know, we as a company have really rallied around Kubernetes, and Kubernetes is really becoming an interface into much, if not almost all, of VMware, and particularly with our infrastructure. And you know, this has to go back to vSphere as well. And so, you know, what we did with Project Pacific was to really say, hey, we can expand an ESX cluster to be simultaneously a Kubernetes cluster. And the power of this is a fewfold. First of all, it allows us to start taking advantage of some of these Kubernetes properties and these kind of integrations to enable us to run Kubernetes applications natively in these kind of lightweight VMs and so forth. But there's more that we can do than that as well, because while it's great to be able to run, you know, containers and VMs side by side, what's even more powerful is if we can actually use Kubernetes as an infrastructure interface. And so I mentioned before how we've got our management SDK moving over to our automation SDK, which is REST-based, and now we have a Kubernetes interface as well. If I look over the long term, I can see us doing a lot to really standardize on Kubernetes as well in terms of workload and application management, and just driving more and more there. And so what we've done is started by exposing a small set of services, TKG, which is our Kubernetes cluster service, vSphere pods, kind of the native pod for us, networks, volumes, storage volumes, even a registry. But Kubernetes is extremely extensible, right? We've taught Kubernetes about VMs. We can send it in different ways. We want to work with partners to add in their own integrations and operators, right? And so this is really a whole new automation plane, I think, for our customers to start taking advantage of. So it's really interesting that now we're going to have, you know, two major APIs, kind of our automation SDK and our Kubernetes API coming out of vSphere. But they're not looking at different things. They're actually looking at the same stuff underneath. It's just different ways of interacting with the system. So really, it's just giving you more choice and flexibility. And, you know, as you'll see throughout today and tomorrow, a ton of activity happening around Kubernetes across VMware. But it was critical for us to also bake this into our core product, vSphere. Okay, so that was just a really quick flyby there. A lot of exciting things, but a lot more will be covered over the next few days. The other one I wanted to talk about was pretty late breaking. We just announced this a couple of days ago, but I thought it was important enough from the automation standpoint that it's very much worth including. Because when you look at the underlying physical infrastructure, you know, there's many different kinds. Some people run on-prem, some people run on the cloud, you know, and you find within the cloud, they've done a lot to automate their physical infrastructure. For VMC and AWS, we can call an API and just a bare metal server appears out of the ether, right? They've somehow automated hardware. And that's pretty cool, right? And, you know, when you start looking on-prem, it's like, well, wouldn't it be awesome if we could start automating hardware on-prem as well to get those same sorts of cloud benefits and capabilities from the physical infrastructure side, but to do so on-prem. So that's really what we're doing with Project Monterey. Now, this is a little bit different way of looking at it than the way we talked about it the last couple of days. But what I want to do is kind of walk through some of the same slides that we used 2 days ago, but talk about them more from an automation perspective. Because when we looked at the value props here, things like you see performance, security, operations, it's really that operations one that becomes interesting. Because what we're effectively doing here is putting an API on the hardware. And that allows for dramatically simplified operations through automation, right? Okay, so let's dive in and kind of see how this works here. So here we have our SmartNIC, which is really what this all revolves around. We get increased manageability through this extra management port here. We've got our general purpose CPU, which can run all sorts of stuff, specifically ESXi, but also NSX, vSAN, so forth. We can offload a lot of stuff from the x86 server, saving cycles there. And we get this really cool functionality where we can expose virtualized devices on the PCI bus. So it's kind of like this virtual physical device thing, which is kind of mind-blowing. But what's the fundamental thing here? Well, we've got a physical card that has all these cool hardware properties that are manageable via software automation, right? Okay, so let's see how we're doing this. So what we're doing here is really rethinking the architecture of ESX. Fundamentally, we're running a second copy of ESX on the SmartNIC. And by doing so, we can move host management, NSX, security, vSAN, all these things down. They're just keeping the core compute hypervisor running on the x86 side, and that frees up cycles for the VMs. That's all good stuff, right? But something else happens here fundamentally. Now, the blue ESX can start managing the green ESX because the SmartNIC controls network and all sorts of I/O access to the x86 host. We can do this kind of pixie booting of whatever we want. We can just give it an image and manage that bare metal OS image, kind of like a VM, right? And so we can now turn this blue ESX, the one that's running on the SmartNIC, into kind of an automation hub for the x86 side. And that means we can provision not just an ESX operating system image, but really any operating system image that we want. And so this is how we can start supporting bare metal workloads inside of vSphere and VCF. So it's a really foundational transformation here, something really, really powerful. And while we can do that on a single host basis, I think the real power in automation comes when we talk about multiple hosts. Because what we're talking about here is really starting to now make a more dynamic cluster. So what do I mean by that? Well, normally when an application is running, it's using physical resources from its local host. But because of the SmartNIC's capability to expose these virtualized devices, as long as we have the right sorts of interconnects between these SmartNICs, and we're thinking something like CXL, Gen Z, or whatever, something that's coming down the line, we can now take these remote FPGAs, GPUs, etc., and start running them on that VM or application that's running remotely, even in a bare metal server. So we're kind of remoting these physical devices to the place where they're needed, and we can do that all dynamically, right? So the cool part about this is that while there is a physical layout there and physical interconnects, the exact sets of hardware capabilities an app is getting is independent of where exactly that app runs and the host that it runs on. That via software, we can recompose the cluster to deliver what that application needs on the fly. So super, super powerful, right? And this is how we can see a path toward enabling automation of our hardware, of our clusters on premises, right? To get the same sort of agility and dynamics that you find in the public cloud. So a few quick examples here of how we're really thinking automation across the entire stack. And as I said, how important this is going to be. So very, very exciting. But as I said, just the tip of the spear because we've got 2 whole days of much more content. So thanks again so much for coming, and have a fun 2 days. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Kit, for doing that, for a great presentation. The next one, I think you can go to our agenda and schedule yourself for the next session that will be happening. And Kripa, anything else that we need to direct people to get them to the next session that will be happening? And Kit, amazing as always. Love to see, you know, the vision, and I learned a few more things here. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, happy to. Are there any, do we have any questions or anything? It doesn't look like it.
We have a little bit of, there was 1 or 2 questions here. Let's see if I can get
Dots in the ocean equal dark site. Yes, yeah, probably.
During some VMware sessions, I get the feeling VMware would prefer people to use Python over PowerCLI. Any thoughts?
I don't think so. I don't think that's our. If that's the impression you got, I don't think that's kind of represents the overall VMware impression. PowerCLI is a huge investment area, but you know we are working on language support across the board, Python and Go and a bunch of these different languages. So I think we're trying as much as possible to support all these. You know what you found if you look historically at VMware is that it has been a little bit of a patchwork. Different products support slightly different things. And we've been spending a lot of effort into standardizing that. And as I mentioned, this was a real quick flyby, like single sentence I said, we're actually trying to work more internally on automation to generate all these different SDKs, PowerCLI, integrations, et cetera, et cetera. Historically, people have had to manually get all that up and running. You know, Go, vMami, Python, vMami, all these things, right? But if we can dynamically generate them, then they can all be sort of at the same level, right? All get the latest and greatest. And so we're moving toward that model. So again, it's not trying to favor one over the other. It's really trying to get as broad a choice as possible. So again, we're not totally there yet. We made a lot of good strides, but that's really the vision, the goal here.
Okay, great. One other question I see in here was support for vSAN in the provider on the roadmap as a resource.
Which the Terraform? Are we talking about Terraform here? I'm not sure which provider, but yeah. So that is there. I don't know exactly where it is though, so we need to get back to you on that one. There's many more experts I think here that can answer that. You know, directionally, we do absolutely want to cover, you know, all parts of VCF. I think, you know, I was talking specifically about the vSAN provider, but we want to expand that, right? And I do know that, you know, VRA, as I mentioned, has done a lot with Terraform there. But yeah, we want to support vSAN and NSX as well, for that matter, that they have their own provider.
Okay, great. I think that is it for the questions.
We're probably out of time now. Well, thanks again, everyone. And this is really awesome. Hope you guys enjoy it. Have a great conference. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.